at 6 o'clock. So call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting of USD 464 for Monday, June 13th. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I need to make a couple amendments to the agenda because we had Audra with us on Wednesday at the retreat. I'm going to add Cody Witt as THS principal to the consent agenda. That would be First Amendment. The Second Amendment is to add action item 5.8 regarding the Greenbush agreement that's in the membership that's in the packet under Lauren's report. With that, is there a second to amend the agenda?
A second.
All in favor of the agenda as amended, please raise your right hand. All right, motion carried. That we will move into the presentations. Jill, you get first.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm just here to kind of update you on our fleet. So this first sheet, oh, sorry, I should probably just keep one for myself. So.
You don't have it memorized?
And then the second one is what I have for kind of our rotation as long as nothing goes, out of their order. So we did get our new bus number 15. It's a small bus, or I'm sorry, 17. It's a small bus. We just received that last Tuesday. It will carry 12 students and 2 wheelchairs, which we need. So bus 3, 15, and 17 both carry 2 wheelchairs and 12 students. So that's great. I was excited to get that. We should be getting our new bus, hopefully, like all of the new automobiles. There's lots of delays. So we ordered that last, I think, September, and we are hoping to get it in August, but it's going to be another 77 passenger bus, which is great because we had bus number 2 that went down early this year, and on your other page here with the rotation, so it's crossed through. And then bus 36 and 64 are the ones that we will be currently removing out of the fleet line. 36 is a small bus that had a wheelchair lift. It only held the 1 wheelchair. And so it's a 2007. We kept having to jump start it. It just kept kind of losing juice. And then 64, the frame has become rusted through. So obviously we're not going to put that back on the road with students in it. Do you have any questions for me about?
And then our future plans in July.
Yes.
Why don't you touch on that real quick?
Hopefully we could order another bus because it will take a year or more to get it in. And with the age of our fleet, it would be really advantageous for us to continue updating. Just like 64, I wasn't really planning to get that one out of the rotation, but it's rusted. It's rusted through, so we can't, keep kids in it.
And then the Ford Transit.
Yes, we are looking to hopefully get another, sorry, Mr. Feldkamp, thank you for reminding me. Hopefully, we would like to possibly get another Ford Transit van with driver shortages. It's made it a little helpful to coaches and sponsors to be able to take, if not their whole team, part of the team, and then we can bring the rest of the team when we get done with routes and whatnot. So in the spring, we have golf that needs 2 vans on a regular basis because they practice at golf courses, right? And so that doesn't leave us very many extra vans, just a couple. So if we could possibly look into getting another Ford Transit, I think it would really help the district.
And I think most of you already understand that it might take a year to year and a half.
Right,
to get-
yes. When I went to look for a bid, they didn't even have it on the site. Like it wasn't even there. It's supposed to be up sometime this summer, but I haven't noticed it there yet.
So there's no state bid right now.
Not right now.
So we got 2 last year, is that the 50 and the 80, or one of
That
these is
was-
gonna be delivered?
One's to be delivered, and then one was replacing the wrecked one.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
80 we received. Mhm. Right.
Yeah. So we'll be caught up when the new one comes in
Yes.
a few weeks, hopefully.
It's probably a sore subject, but I know drivers, this is a challenge.
It's a
We're
challenge.
broadcast live, so maybe you can get some plea out to some people to get
We need bus drivers in the worst way. We're 4 short, so we're working together to try to figure out how things are going to work for this upcoming school year, because I don't have enough drivers to fill the routes that we have. So we're kind of,
So one thing you might mention while we're, on air here is that we will pay for the training of drivers to get their CDL. Because that's one of the biggest issues is it's become tougher and tougher
yes.
to even get them trained.
And we do have a
they've
trainer.
ramped up the requirements.
Right, we have a trainer on staff, and so, yes, we offer that. Training would be all done here in-house. So, yes.
I appreciate the update, and I know you've kind of got pigeonholed over the middle school and all your buses over here, so as we've done the high school project, so thank you to you and like the drivers and everybody for kind of weathering this out with us.
Yep, absolutely.
We're still trying to figure out maybe where to land everything that is on the radar.
Just a place to park would be great.
Thanks, Jill.
Any other questions for Jill? If not, thanks again, thank you.
All
for
right,
that update.
thank you.
Rebecca?
Hello, it's nice to see you all again. So I'm going to talk briefly about our budget. We're working on closeout for this current year. And I believe one of the action items on your agenda tonight is the approval of our closing budget authority, so we'll be able to go ahead and do that. We'll be attending the budget workshop at the end of the month to look forward to things for next year. We'll be working on closing out officially the first week of July, and then immediately following that, we'll start working on the budget for the new year. Greenbush will be assisting with that again. And then we're also confident still about our projections and the ability to bring back our cash balances to start the new year.
So I think what the overall message is, we feel very comfortable with our closeout,
Yes,
our projections.
everything looks good.
Yes, and we've met all our goals, budgetarily for 2021, 22. And so,
When do we get do we have to wait till clear to June 30th to get the updated appraised valuations from the county? Is that-
they come in sometime usually late June, early July.
I received them this week.
You got them?
I have not
Okay.
had a chance to review them yet. They came
Okay.
in.
All right.
I mean, I guess when we get that, we might share it with Dustin Avey, just so that he can update that stuff they're tracking for us on that, for the
Okay.
bond and interest mill levy.
Mhm. I will get that over to him.
You might, I mean, if you have the overall or a total, it might be something useful just to share with the board, so we know to know what the increase in valuation was.
Okay. Once I get a chance to review that, I'll
Yeah,
send that out to you
and
guys.
then, I got vacation at the end of this week, I'm not gonna look
It's good.
at it. Anything else for Rebecca? Anyone? If not,
You guys have a
thank
great
you.
night. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Aaron.
I'm expecting to talk a lot, so I don't know water. All right, good evening. All right, we'll go through a regular project update for the high school bond project. So starting out with a little budget update. Overall bond fund summary remains unchanged. The amount of construction GMP and contingencies and the overall bond amount. On the contingency detail summary, you can see specifically on the district GMP, so that's the $1 million we set aside into the GMP originally. The current amount is based on those several larger change orders that the board approved last month, so those have been approved and updated in here. So the forecasted change here, if you notice, is quite a bit more of pending changes. One of the bigger ones I'm going to talk about this evening, which is this connection between the roof detail of the new gym and the existing gym. We also walked the West Campus one last time as things are finishing up with Mr. Feldkamp and some of the staff, looking at just kind of some last minute details that really stand out now that everything else is cleaned up, some additional things to add to the renovation scope there. So those are really the two biggest items that make that up. The soft cost contingency, it has remained unchanged for the last several months, and we have not dipped into any of the district project contingency. And then the facility improvement allowance that we've been using for some of those project enhancements has not changed this past month. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip to the contingency detail here real quick. It's gotten rather long. But just jumping down to the percentage of contingencies used. You can see we're still at 67% of the GMP contingency used, which is the forecasted amount is still about right in line with the progress of the project, and we have not dipped into the contingency outside of the GMP yet. So still think we're in really good shape there. As far as schedule goes, our next substantial completion date is for the West Campus renovations. That's looking real good for a completion on 7/1. The furniture company is all lined up, as well as the moon company, to get that part wrapped up. And then shortly thereafter, the East Campus rooms around the TPAC that are getting new flooring and new paint over this summer will be turned back over on 7/18. Fitness and wellness is still tracking towards December 28th construction completion date. So weather days, got the last 3 months here. The May was wet, but the way it fell into the schedule, McCown Gordon claimed 3 of the 4 contractual weather days, so no additional days were added to their request there. A couple upcoming inspections. We've got the West Campus punch list is scheduled for 6/24. And the 50% fire marshal walk for the athletics edition will be approximately $726. So other upcoming schedule, key milestone dates, the gymnasium slab on grade pour. I know we're going to get into that a lot later at the end of my report here, but that is currently scheduled for 7/15, as well as setting some of the low roof steel and getting the gymnasium roofing started. The high roof area, which is the gymnasium and the commons area outside, it's kind of broken up into two sections on the schedule. That is scheduled to be dried in near the end of July, and the full building dried in at the end of August. The gym flooring install has shifted a little bit in the schedule just to make sure there's enough time to get everything in that space ready before they show up. So that's currently set for 9:30 and the bleachers 10:25. The final polishing of the concrete will be around the first week of November, and then the FF&E install starting after the construction is complete on 12/28. So you can see really the last 2.5, 3 months of construction is really just gym floor and bleachers. So be a lot to focus on there.
Is that 28th of December athletics on
That's the whole building, that's the whole addition. So it's the gym and all the
Is that starting the install of the FF&E or
yes,
finishing?
that's starting the install. Yeah. There's not a whole lot over there. It's pretty minimal because most of the FF&E is the bleachers, which are in McCown's scope, so those will be in before that.
Okay.
We'll just be getting scorers tables and players chairs, and there's one classroom, and then the choir's the other big room that try and get finished up before school starts, but I'll have to work through that a little bit. All right, going into some of our risks, issues, and changes. So continue to just leave on here the Learning Center punch list and warranty. We walked last week. There continues to be some drywall cracks at the stairwells where there are very large walls of drywall. So we met as a team with DLR and McCown to look at what might be done to prevent that, because the crack before is fixed and now it's cracked in a different spot. So looking at adding some additional control joints to remediate that. The roofing inspection, the manufacturer's roofing inspection has been completed. McCown's working on getting those items wrapped up to do a final sign off on the roof. The Athletics and West Campus furniture and FF&E, so still on track for 7/5 delivery date for the West Campus furniture. We're having a pre-delivery meeting with Scott Rice next week to go through the logistics of that. The athletics furniture, as I just spoke of, is still on order for the December delivery date. And then the training room equipment and gym scores table and chairs have been ordered. And those were kind of the last pieces we were working through, design and logos and budget and all that. So should have everything ready to go there. Project FF&E and soft cost budget. So talked about this a little bit last month. We've been ordering a lot of little things here and there as we finished out the learning center and going into the athletics. So I sat down, getting all the invoices from Rebecca and working with Lauren and the high school staff, and we did a real deep dive to adjust every cost category and see where we were at with all the FF&E costs. So really good news there. Everything is in good shape. We've gone over budget in some areas, but under budget in others. The largest savings was due to the low voltage qualifying for the E-rate funding. So when we originally budgeted the job, we just budgeted it just in case it didn't receive that. So that was contributed a lot there. So in terms of that side budget, which is a big number, if you look back at your front page, that's all in really good shape with probably about 99% of all the FF&E purchased at this point, or committed at least. So roof connection to the existing gym, that's what I mentioned, is one of the larger items contributing to that forecasted contingency. I'm not going to read through this whole thing. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read it. I also sent some additional information to the board late last week. So the solution has been agreed to. There is some rework involved. Cal Gordon has begun correcting that on a time and material basis. We're assembling all those costs and keeping an eye on it. They had to order some new material, so trying to get all that, keep that moving while we assemble those costs and get to a solution on that design detail. I'm going to skip over the polished concrete for a minute, and we'll come back to that at the end. West Campus, existing kitchen renovations for the rec. So this is an action item, right, Lauren?
Right.
Okay. So I put in the report the dollar value. So this is renovating the old kitchen in West Campus into kind of a multi-purpose concessions use for the rec and any future use. Scope consists of just cleaning up the mechanical and plumbing connections, new ceiling, lights, paint, and a new utility and dish sink. So the total cost of that is $19,281. And the rec has agreed to pay half of that. The district, if approved tonight, will pay the other half. There is, I did not have this at the time I sent out the board report. So this is just kind of a summary of where the costs come from in that $19,000. So, the plumbing is the biggest part. This is based on a sink. We're still trying to find a less expensive sink that meets the purpose, but this is based on the one that DLR specified. So this could go down a little bit, but that's what we have right now. And then, of course, electrical is the other big part of the cost. So kind of shows you the breakdown there. Project design enhancements, I wanted to hit on that for just a little bit. And Lauren and I talked about this very briefly at the end of last week, but I know there's hopefully an upcoming special board meeting to talk some more about the master planning. There are a couple items on that design enhancement list that we've bounced around for a while, the biggest one being the CTE renovations. And the conversation has kind of been around potentially, if that's something the district wants to move forward with, that could be done next summer. So just with the way procurement is and timelines, if there's any thought about doing that next summer, if that's anywhere on your radar, it would be something that probably needs to get in motion here in the next couple months. Especially the AV portion of it. So part of that proposed cost that was put together before was upgrading the AV in those rooms to mimic all the new classrooms that were added with the interactive projectors. And some of those projectors right now are 6 months plus lead time. So if you wanted those completed by next summer, they'd have to get ordered probably before the end of the year. So just kind of wanted to throw that out, put that on the radar as something to consider as we move forward. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? And then we will jump into the polished concrete floor conversation? Okay. So I shared a lot of information with you guys in this report and over the weekend, or late last week. So hopefully a lot of the questions have been asked and thrown out, but there's more. County Board is here to help answer and describe, but as you know, the areas, I'm just gonna pull up my map here. Oop. So the non-polished concrete areas in the addition were poured. So all the areas in these two slides that have some sort of color to them were poured. As a check that we've talked about, the special inspector, PSI, came out and did their floor flatness test. And these areas did not meet the specifications. So, meeting all last week with McCowan. McCowan met with their subcontractors. We met with DLR and the district staff. Talked through a remediation plan that has been described here in this report. In addition to the plan for remediating these areas that were poured, I also sent out to the board on Thursday the plan that has been agreed to going forward, with the idea that we have more pours coming up that are much more critical than this one that was done in terms of what levels they meet. So with that, I will open it up to any other questions or comments, and if it's anything Town can specifically address, I'll have him come up here and talk to you too.
There's different recommended remediation for different areas. How did you arrive at those different ones?
Are you talking this color-coded plan here? Or
Right.
the future pours?
The color-coded one there.
Okay.
Specifically what's noted to remain as is versus epoxy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll jump into that and you guys can jump in if I miss something. So most of them are storage rooms, and so specifically I remember this room itself had actually tested out to a 2519 or 2520 or something like that. So the team felt, after both a visual inspection and reviewing the specs with DLR, that was an acceptable, well, it's not the spec, it was acceptable in standards for a storage or back of house type finish. Plus, they're sealed concrete areas, so you can't, if you grind and float, you're gonna see it. So then your options become tearing it out or putting a floor covering on it. And we didn't think that putting a floor covering in a storage area was an appropriate solution.
Inappropriate for in what way?
Well, like this multi-purpose room is where the basketball goals are gonna be stored. So pushing, rolling stuff in and out on epoxy floor, could get damaged and durability over time. The sealed concrete is a better finish for a storage room. So the only other rooms were these coaches' offices. And that could be a discussion if there's a desire to epoxy those or carpet those or something in lieu of leaving them as concrete. But we felt that they were small enough rooms. We're talking a 1/4 inch. It's 1/4 inch per 10 foot is what they're off from the spec. So visually, you can't see it. We went out there and laid down on the floor. But If the board feels otherwise, that's,
That's kind of hard to tell
This is
without
just-
looking at it. Because you can see,
What was that, Drew?
it's kind of hard to tell without looking at it.
yeah.
Because you can certainly see the polished, what we have right now.
These aren't polished, these are
Right.
sealed.
Yeah, the polishing.
And they're
breaks it.
small, they're smaller rooms, so you don't have that linear ripple effect,
Yeah.
and there's furniture in them. So that was the opinion of the team between discussions with DLR and what I looked at out there and talking to Lauren and his staff. So. As shown here, the locker rooms would get epoxy over them, and then you already have epoxy in all these blue areas, and then carpet in the green ones is already part of the plan. Did I miss anything there, guys? Did you add anything?
So what was what was the reasoning behind like the office areas, coaching rooms not having any remediation and like the training room? Because I see a pattern here to where if it looks like if it's got water in it, it got epoxy. But the training room doesn't look like,
The training room is already specified to have epoxy.
okay.
That's in the spec, that's what it's getting.
The yellow areas are
The yellow, the two yellow were specified to have sealed concrete, and
Okay.
McCowan and their sub have offered to add epoxy in there so that they can grind and finish those rooms.
Okay, so those are the only two that,
And that's probably better than it per slip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
the existing locker rooms have epoxy in
yeah.
And
You're getting upgraded. You're getting an upgrade for free.
You know, one of the things we talked about, like in the coach's offices, is if we wanted to put carpet down, it's a minimal cost. I mean, but we haven't really talked about that yet with any of you.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the only thing about putting carpet down in the coach's offices is just cleaning them.
Yeah, and you have the restroom right next to them.
Right,
And not that,
and so that's the only reason. It's just a maintenance.
yeah. But I think, yeah. So that was just the proposal of what
Right.
seemed
And we,
like a good solution of the areas that would still get you quality, expected quality, so.
so we all know that this had extra attention on it, right? And yet we're still talking about it right now. So, I mean, has the factors that contributed to this been identified so that they can be avoided in the future, or what's the root cause, or because we still have more to do, and like Aaron said, it's as we progress, it gets more critical.
Yeah, so, good question, but we poured these areas intentionally first because none of these are polished areas, or the gym that carries the 50, the more stringent. And the reason we did that was just for this reason. And that's why when we found out these numbers, we came with a plan that goes to the concrete pours to have a clear vision of this happens, this is what's going to happen. That way you know the expectations going forward on the rest of these pours. So I know in the packets, I think that went out, the corridors, which we talked about last time, part of the enhancements with the epoxy in these locker rooms, we've also talked them into, forced them to make them a topping slab. That way the project can move forward. And by some time, the next pour would be the gymnasium, which is 50. And as you move refer to that flow chart, if they don't hit the 50, then the expectation is that's the last concrete that they'll pour on this project. And the 50 can be remediated as far as floating and grinding, because it's covered obviously the sleepers and then the gym floor. And that's part of the remediation that is acceptable for the spec. And when it's covered up, that's a typical thing. So that's, because that was strategic the way that we got them to change it to a topping slab. That way the polished areas are getting poured last. So this is, I'm sure you guys saw this before, but just to kind of take you through this is, so anything that's polished is not going to be poured now. It's going to be poured later, that later date. If they hit the 50, then they proceed down the path of getting the key form on the job. If they don't, then we move down the path of forcing them to have someone else pour this concrete form.
So you talk about that, how much concrete's gonna be left?
So,
Doesn't look like much.
well, we got the gym, yardage, I don't have that figure exact, but it's a pretty good, but it's wide open, there's nothing. This is what we poured before, and not make any excuses, because I understand 100%, but these are all restrooms, and floor drains, and stuff like that, you know, it's way different than pouring in a gym. So, this should tell the tale on what it is. If they can't hit a 50 in this gym, then they are going to be done pouring concrete.
And then the next section of pouring after the gym floor is actually the high,
The topping,
the topping
Yes.
with the polish, and that's the critical piece.
that's all the polished stuff. That will be the commons, clear story area, and then the two corridors.
Right.
So it kind of seems like we're not sure why we can't meet this spec.
Meaning the present pour,
Right.
I think they,
Why they can't meet the spec?
Yeah.
Something happened, or some things happened, right?
So it's, I can't probably give you a definite answer. There are a bunch of chopped up rooms, which is no excuse on their end. A 35 is potentially maybe a little higher
Yeah.
in the spec, but it's a spec that we all signed up for whenever we took this project. So everybody knows that from the beginning. In some of these rooms where there's lots of drains and stuff, it was tougher to achieve, and they failed to achieve it.
I don't know if it was 35, I thought it was 25.
35 is the spec of the
35,
project. 35, 25.
Yep,
35 flatness, 30.
And what did they get on this?
19.9 and then 23.4.
Okay, so they wouldn't have even met a lower spec then.
Some of the areas, so the combined, what Ben
Yeah,
just
they
told
made
you
it
is like
25 in some of the rooms.
Yeah. So these numbers here, they measure different areas.
Right.
And so,
And we've had 3 sit-down meetings with them since this course up. I went and looked at 2 separate mock-ups on other projects that they've done to come up with different ways to, but mostly these corridors that are really skinny,
Yeah.
different ways of finishing them with higher trowel or hand finishing the whole thing and cutting it up in smaller sections. So they hand crawl the whole thing instead of putting any kind of power trowels on them. It's hard to get a 6-foot ride on in an 8-foot corridor. So we're actively seeking out better ways to try to do it. They're pouring another mock-up on 14th, so I'll go
Okay.
look at that. The first set where they knee crawled it, it was an 8 wide, 16-foot section, and it achieved a 50, 80, I think. So
Yeah.
it was really flat and really level. But again, it was a very small mock-up.
Right.
And then the next mock-up that they did, they used power trowel on, and it fell short. It was in the 30s.
So one other thing I neglected to specifically put in this report, but while we're talking about this, and I can follow up with the markup in your RFI, but in where the building aligns with existing openings, like right here and right here, and then down this hallway by the new choir. You have to tie into the existing elevations. So the existing elevations are all a little, an inch up here, an inch down here.
Right.
So there's a couple of these openings, and
So-
McCown put together a document. You want to talk about that?
So that north hallway, we're an inch difference than the slab elevation. And it's intentional because the majority of the doors are close, within a quarter of an inch. Some of them are right on. But the two far corners are the worst. It's 5/8 down where you tie in at the storage room next to the dock area, and an inch at the north. Everywhere in between is around 3/8 to a quarter to a few of them are right on to the slide height. So those areas have to be ramped up. So when your floor flatness in that, like in that clear story area, there's going to have to be small areas. Can you bring that up? Or
I don't have
no,
that.
not that.
Oh.
But you can show them where that floor flatness report, where it has the lines on it where they tested. Yeah. So all those lines up there, those are the way that they run the machine to
Right.
do the test. You guys have seen that before. There's certain areas by the doors will have to be blocked out where they can't include that in the test because they can't be done flat, basically. They're gonna have to be ramped up. 6 foot this way, 6 foot this way, 6 foot this way to make it ramp up.
The transition, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my assumption is that there's some standards on that the transition has, whether it be ADA or.
It is 1/2 inch is all you can have in between the two buildings, like an offset, and you can put a transition strip in between them. But
Yeah, but as far as that, from the concrete, how you feather that back and do all that, the size of it, just make sure that it's meeting.
So you're not like actually walking up a ramp, is that what you're?
Yeah, or that it's not like like you said, 6 foot if it need, that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like a speed
like a
bump.
percentage, yeah.
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 And if the inside slab is able to, we could go inside and grind them a little bit on the inside, if it's high on the inside,
Yeah,
to make
that's-
them kind of come together. But if it's a different kind of flooring that's already on the inside, like that marble or whatever that was in terrazzo that we demoed, one of the corridors still has that going into the old gym. So we won't be able to touch that, so we'll have a transition strip in between the two, and we'll be stuck with having to float it up at that place. But I know we're getting way into the weeds here. If you have any more questions, I'll be glad to just stop talking and talk more.
Yeah, just to Karen's point, if you don't know exactly, it's kind of like our athletic teams, it's like, if they aren't winning, then, telling them to work harder doesn't really do much. It's like
No.
tactically there's something that's going on that,
And that's why we're doing these mock-ups,
Yeah.
to try to do that, to find, and they've actually given us a start to finish of this is what we're doing first and this is what we're doing second. Mostly for the polished areas. And like I said, we've already had 3 meetings after we got this report with them face-to-face and before we pour any more. The gym, we'll have a couple more sit-down meetings with them. And before we pour the polished top, we'll have another meeting with them. I'm scheduled to pour the bottom part of the polished slab, which doesn't carry any kind of
Right.
testing or anything on it in those corridors at Thursday of this week. So it'll at least get us poured in there, and we'll pour that topping slab in 9/25, somewhere around the end of September is when I pour that topping slab in.
To re-answer your question, Karen, you asked me to, you're right, that this was a test, like we said. We've been talking about this for 6 months with them. And obviously what they did doesn't work, right? So that's why we're involved, telling them what they're gonna do. We understand that these rooms weren't the easiest. They're not like the gym where it's big, wide open, there's walls, and it's not the easiest thing to finish. But that doesn't excuse the fact that they had numbers and they didn't hit them. We didn't hit them. So I think the plan we have in place here to make it right in these rooms is the right direction to go. And moving forward with these topping slabs, that takes as much risk out of it as possible. It opens up some better method of procedures as far as finishing on that top layer. So that's what we're trying to convey here, is that we're now directing what's going to happen. And they're being completely honest with us and doing their best. Like Ben said, they're doing countless mock-ups to try to make sure what they're going to do in these corridors is going to work, because it is another tough board, 8 foot wide.
Yeah, you push the limits what the flatness spec will accommodate.
Well, they're taking a couple different exceptions to even be able to test those corridors.
Yeah, I think 8 foot is the minimum single width.
It's actually 11, you gotta have 11-foot runs. And they're doing them at an angle, supposed to have 2 foot, and not to get in the weeds too far. You gotta have 2 foot setback from each wall, and you gotta have 11 foot to test, so you really need 15 feet minimum. But they're taking an exception, then they say if your exception is less than 25% of the entire square footage, you can't do it, and they're doing another exception.
Yeah.
So we're trying with the testing company to get them to test, but in order to be able to test these corridors, we're taking 2 exceptions to even be able to test them.
From the written standard.
From the S2 standard.
Now, the gym, no problem testing it, but, and the clear story area, it's plenty wide enough to test also. These corridors are really iffy to even test, but we are. One more thing that we didn't add onto there is by doing these as topping slab, it's if the numbers don't come back right on those topping slabs, they're a lot easier to remediate later. You only have to take the topping instead of the sub slab out.
I would imagine that there's a risk there if you go the route of doesn't conform to the spec as you go down that decision tree, and you start to plug someone else in, you get into labor availability and
Yeah, and the current market we're in right now, it would probably be tough in June or July to try to get a different concrete sub. It's just not.
The topping slabs don't pour till September, so.
No, I guess, but I'm just
Yeah.
talking
Oh, yeah, right. If we did it today, yeah.
overview.
yeah, just my opinion, I'm more, and this is only me again, is to me, getting the right product and quality is a higher priority than schedule for, to get it done. Because that's what you're going to see for forever.
And that's why we're trying to come up with the best plan to buy ourselves the most time for that topic.
Any other questions? I mean, I appreciate you guys being here, the help and the actions are.
Yeah, there's no action item, just really want to make sure that everybody understands and is comfortable. And if there were any additional things that we want to add to the plan, that everybody had a chance to understand it and ask their questions. So,
I do have a quick question. So the cost of them putting epoxy over these floors is obviously cheaper than the other alternative of tearing them out.
probably.
That and adding a topping slab or,
Yeah.
and paying the carpet guys and the epoxy guys to remediate whatever needs to be ground or floated
Yeah.
in any of the purple areas.
So they're gonna remediate, Chris, they're gonna, even in these epoxy areas, the only reason that the plan includes adding epoxy to those is so they can remediate those areas by floating and grinding. And if the finish was left the current spec of sealed concrete, you'd see those remediations.
Right.
So adding the epoxy is really just to allow you to be able to remediate it and cover it up, and you end up with higher quality finish. So, all these areas, except for the red ones, are gonna be remediated, plus the epoxy added.
Or carpet.
Yeah, right, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? We're good. Thank you guys for
Thank
coming
you.
out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You
So
too,
that's all I
Allison.
had on my report.
Great job, Allison.
If there's not any other questions?
No, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to answer all those questions. All right. With that, we move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 4-0. Audra, Stephanie dropped at 6:30.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. Was it? Do we have any public comments? Audra? No public
No, I heard
comments?
none.
Public? No patron.
Okay. I guess with that, we'll move into the reports. Lauren?
Okay. Well, my first one on my report is we've been working on the lease agreement with the Tominox Rec Commission, and currently Angie Stahlbaumer gave us a rough draft, and Drew and Justin are going to take a look at that, and we'll sit down and probably with Drew, Justin, myself, and Angie and go over it again and kind of see what we all might need to add or adjust. And so after we're done with that, then we will meet with the rec commission to kind of go over our draft with them. And, you know, Drew, you mentioned that the other day, but the only thing they needed that lease for was they were working on their September budget.
Okay.
So we have time. I mean, we need to keep moving on this. So Angie, well, as soon as you guys are ready, I'll set up a meeting with Angie and we'll sit down and go
Well,
over
most of I sent my comments to Justin, but he's been
it. Right,
pretty busy.
right.
But it's not related to cost or anything like that. It's just clarifying. For example, we talk about utility. There's sharing of, or split of utility costs, but it doesn't say, or I'm not certain whether or not we have a method or
Yeah,
process of how you calculate that.
right.
And there's just a number of things like that in there that isn't related to, I think we can accommodate their budgetary questions.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're making progress. That's the main topic here, is we are making progress and continue to work with them. We're in a better place than we were a month ago. The engagement special position, this is a request, we've talked about this for 4 months. And, this is something that we have briefly talked about on and off as a board. We talked a little bit about it at our vision, mission goals, Wednesday, but this is, to me, it's just a very important position that I would really like for us to explore. This is not hiring anyone. This is, I would just like for us to post this, to be able to look and see what kind of qualities out there. The job description that you all have, I think, is a pretty solid job description. I just feel there's a lot of advantages of having someone help bring this all together and to help create a better message, better communication. And one of the things we talked about Wednesday was celebrating our successes, being more proactive with our messaging. And this is what this kind of a person would do. And so it's it will be my recommendation to approve adding this as a classified position, that we need to, approve that so we can post it. And then we would come back in a month and go through our applicants and see what we have, and maybe bring a candidate or, to the board for approval, but that's a month away. On the vandalism update, just wanted to, and I've kind of mentioned this a little bit in my Friday reports, McCown Gordon, DLR, myself met with Treadwell, and they are going to be coming in June 20th. They're going to do spot applications on some of the darker areas. They think that they can help lighten some of those areas up, but it's going to be like a process, like a 4-step process of trying to make it look better. And there's also some pretty significant stains at the top of the steps that need to be addressed. When we did a broad application the morning we found out about all this happening, it was put in a wide area. I mean, it wasn't spot applicated. So they're thinking that maybe they can really attack a smaller area, and so we'll see. But we don't have a cost yet, and so we're still working on all that.
Do we have a running total at the moment?
Yes, yeah. We're keeping track of everything. Yes, you've asked about that. Negotiations, we had our first meeting on the evening of June 6th. We worked together to talk through a few things, but we didn't, it was pretty high level. I thought it was successful. Appreciated TEA, being there and sharing some of their verbiage, that they would like to see added. That was a lot of the discussion. And of course, there was some discussion, and we'll talk about that, I think, in executive session here in a few minutes. I met with Amber Beverlin this afternoon, and what we would like to do, and if you guys, you don't have to let me know right now, but we're looking at that first Wednesday in July, which is the 6th. That's the date she has available, and I would like to see if we can get, we all know that we need to have almost everybody there for the master plan because of everybody's contribution to this very important discussion. So right now, it's Wednesday the 6th at 5:30 in the district office. With your approval, we would like to set that up so we can keep this moving forward. I know we're battling vacations, we're battling personal family plans, and there's all sorts of things going on. So this has really been hard to try to get this in.
I guess I would probably maybe send out an email.
I will
Get
send
people to confirm, and
Yeah.
everybody can get back to him.
I'd like to send
I
out
can't do the 5th, but I could do
the 6th.
home on the 6th.
Amber wasn't available either the 5th or the 7th. So it was that Wednesday, which would be perfect for me, but maybe not you guys. The other thing that's, it's not in my Friday report, but it's part of it, is we noticed that our Greenbush contract exceeded the $20,000 limit that I have by $230. So it needs to be approved by the board, and that's the right thing to do. So appreciate that. I think that's it for me. And I will be sending out an invite for the master plan. That's the big item.
Any other questions for Lauren? Not?
Oh, one other thing, I'm sorry. And then Drew has these, I'm sorry. This is the first pass of the KSB policies. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah, I've gone through it, I just haven't had a chance to
Yeah,
send it.
so I haven't either, Drew. So we need to, Drew and I have gone, we passed through these. This will be what I would consider our first review. We'll bring this to the July board meeting for board approval.
Yeah, I have more comments on this one than I have.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in this, obviously, so that's all I have.
Tanya?
All right. Some of these things will be in the action items for approval. The emergency operations plan, I just wanted to let you know what was updated. We removed Mr. Farrar and added Mr. Witt for all the contact for building principal. We've updated the district office location, command center for THS and the district office, and then we updated THS with the new maps as of what we have so far for THS. So that is everything we updated for the emergency operations plan. And we said we would bring that every year for reapproval.
Did it have both floors of the elementary school in it?
I believe so. We can look at that on board docs. It should have both floors. I can double check that. If it does not, I will add it. A couple other things for renewal there for you. We brought information last month on the Guidance Center partnership to offer that school-based mental health services in our schools. That is following all the guidelines. The MOU I included in the board packet last month for your review. That was co-written by KASB, so they have approved that. And it is in your packet for approval tonight. It costs us nothing, just a space for that person to be, and that person will work with us year-round. Although we would not be paying that person's salary, they would be considered one of our staff members. And the other item for renewal for approval would be the parents as teachers renewal. That should be the exact same as last year. We just renewed the same number of families, same number of slots, and the same amount of money spent last year. So if you have any questions on those, let me know for reapproval for those. The other items in my packet would be data. I included the map data, which shows growth from this fall 21 to spring of 22, and in the packet there, that is pages 1 through 12. State assessment data, we have from page 13 to 23, and then the panorama data, page 24 through 69. There's a lot of information to go through, and I will tell you that our administrators are meeting on this. We are developing a plan of action. All of our professional development next year will be based around how we are using this data to move forward and make improvements within our district. So we'll be bringing you more information on how that's working through the year next year with our building reports and with my reports. And also, this is part of our KISA accreditation. This coming school year, we will be in year 5, so that's the year we will be accredited. So that's an important process, very important year to use data to improve instruction in our district and improve our test scores.
Would that plan be like available for the July meeting, or
No,
because you'll do the training, the development will be a lot in August or throughout the year.
It'll be throughout the year. We have met and developed most of the year's plan so far. We're still adding a few pieces to that, some trainings that we have to put in front load at the beginning of the school year, and then we'll meet again to refine that. So I will bring at least the professional development plan to you so that you have that information. That will be in either July, probably closer to August,
first,
so that we can lay the whole thing out for you.
And it looks like we didn't exceed in anything on a lot of these scores, but we met on some are slightly below. I just glanced at it very quickly.
It's not where we want to be. We're not happy with it, so we are ready to,
Good work.
yeah, we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work for next school year. We have a lot to accomplish next school year.
That's all I have for you.
Any other questions? Fire away.
Okay, yeah, I have one more thing. I need to mention this, because Drew asked about this last week, but school safety has become the forefront of the discussion nationwide, statewide, district-wide. And Greg Lawson, our police chief, has been very proactive in working with the 3 building lead administrators, contacting me several times to visit about a plan. We're meeting later this week, and we haven't exactly set up the date, but I'm available later this week. We're going to meet with Greg, the SRO, the building administrators, just to kind of more of a high level. And I know I'm just going to ask Drew, because Drew talked to Casey for quite a while, and Casey and Cody and Chuck have been working with KSDE, with a person to come in and work with our staff, part of it, maybe some professional development plan on school safety. And I don't know, Drew, if you had too much to add to that, but I think there's a plan in place, or at least we have training that we're going to be implementing. And I mean, we just have a lot of work to do on it.
Well, I was encouraged that they're not doing it on their own. There's resources, and some of the top resources in the state of Kansas that they have connected with and are getting involved to provide insight, guidance on recommendations and evaluations. So that was really good that getting that outside perspective.
We do have a walkthrough planned this summer with our resources from KSDE to walk through each building and look at possible scenarios, gather information, and then that same gentleman will be coming back and presenting at the first part of school. So he'll meet with the entire staff, everybody classified, certified, and then he'll also go to each building and do some training based on what we've learned from the walkthrough.
And we also, and Greg and I and the administrators, Tanya, we all feel it's important that we get that message out to the public, that this is a top priority, the student safety, as we move into, August, start of school. I mean, Greg is very intent on making sure that we have a solid plan in place, that this is important, very important to the school district and all of us. So we'll be working on this.
Thanks for adding that.
Thank you.
With that, I believe we're done with Tanya's section. Move into action items. I'd entertain a motion to approve the closing budget authority.
Second. Need a second?
I move we authorize Lauren, or the approve action item 5.1.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Right hand, all right, motion carried. Action 5.2, I move that we approve the updated 2022-23 Tominox City Emergency Operations Plan. Is there a second?
I second it.
Could we amend it to include the second floor of the elementary school?
Yes.
It's been moved and amended that we add the second floor of the elementary. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. I would move we approve action item 5.3, the memorandum with the guidance center. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion carried. I would approve renewal of the agreement with Keystone Parents as teachers for 22-23. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. I guess I could ask for discussion. Item 5.5, I just asked Lauren earlier, I think this is all budgetary planned and built in and are part of our normal rotation of computers. Forrest is nodding his head, so unless there's any questions, I would move that we approve action item 5.5, the approval of the desktop computers.
A second.
Second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, motion carried. Approval of the West Campus kitchen renovations. I think Aaron talked about this earlier. I think the Rex agreed to pay half,
I've received a letter,
Some
email.
of us, I don't know if everyone has had a chance to tour that, but it does need kind of cleaned up and make it a usable space. Any discussion, comments?
My thing was just, in the unlikely event that, it doesn't need to be part of this motion, but just a discussion topic is, in the unlikely event that the agreement with the rec commission didn't go through, I would just expect us to reimburse the other half of the rec commission, because they're kind of putting money forward without an agreement in place.
Perfect. Yeah, I think,
If
I think
we
we would,
approve.
I think we'd be, I'd entertain that. But at this point, I would move that we proceed with the kitchen renovation action item 5.6. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. The engagement specialist, Lauren talked about this. I know we've talked about it quite a bit. I think the need for, we've phrased this as a lot of different things. Communication specialist. I think Kyle brought up some pretty good points at the discussion the other day regarding people's ability to transfer from school to school. Now with some of the legislative stuff, I think it's even more of a reason I think you have to be put in a kind of a marketing type position at the school. But so
I agree it has value. My only concern is we're in the middle of a lot of discussion about budgets and, in the negotiations and no levies and, and what opportunities are there to, for the community. But, and so in that environment, for me, it's like always prioritize everything closer to the students in the classroom and then, work out from there. And like I said, I certainly see the value in it, but I'd almost like to see how everything kind of plays out in the next couple months before we.
I can tell you it would be very important, from my perspective, is to get this person in place even before school starts. And I mean,
Yes,
I
agree with that.
Yeah,
Like I said, I don't disagree with anything you've said. It's just the environment and everything else. It's just that gives me pause.
I wouldn't have, honestly, I would not have recommended it if I didn't think we could make it work budgetarily.
I was going to say, we're going to talk about some of that in the executive session, but from what I've viewed, based on how Lauren's trying to proceed with this, I think it's allowable in the budget. And, I guess my counter kind of would be, there's a lot of things Lauren, Tanya, the principals are doing that relates to this, that this person could take off their plate so they can focus on some of those educational things and the professional development and the education. So, I mean, I think there's value in it, and we should proceed looking for the right person that could do that for us. I think we've talked about it a long time, but I don't think we have it slotted in there as a budget buster type item.
My expectation is if we proceed with it, then we aren't selecting the best candidate that we can find. We're trying to find a candidate that meets our expectations for it. And so if you get 10 people and there isn't one of them that's exceptional that we're all excited about, then we shouldn't
I don't disagree.
move forward.
This is an important position. It has to be a right fit.
Any other comments or questions? I would move that the board approve action item 5.7, approval of engagement specialist. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. And then we have 5.8, and as Lauren mentioned, we noticed that the Greenbush contract hadn't been approved for the annual renewal. I'm sure we've used that service for who knows how many years. But I guess the cost has probably just gone up and it kind of hit our threshold.
It went up $400.
It's like $200 over the $20,000 limit. So I just recommended it.
If we don't
Cover.
approve it, does Lauren pay it?
Good luck with that, I'm thinking. I'm not going to claw that back. But anyway, action item 5.8, I move that we approve the Greenbush contract. Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried. All right, running through that. I guess we've already covered the policy updates. That wasn't really an action item, it was in the report, so Drew's going to work on that again. We need just like a brief executive session. I mean, we had the meeting with TA, as Lauren mentioned, and this year I thought maybe we should just get on the front end of everything and have everybody in the loop that's here. So I would move that
We get a short break.
we want a short break, sure. I would say at 7:20 we adjourn it to executive session for 10 minutes. Invite Warren Fell campaign to discuss, Tanya and Lauren into the meeting to discuss negotiated agreement. Does that suffice, Audrey?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All in favor? All right, see you in 5 minutes. session, no action out of executive session, general board discussion. I think Lauren's going to email everybody about the master plan date. I think that's
July 6th.
the big one. The July meeting is always kind of our annual policy updates, the renewal of the officer elections. I'll advertise for all of you to know. And
Don't miss that one.
I think I've missed it 4 years in a row. And I don't know if we have anything else.
Not right now.
All right, with that, meeting adjourned.